Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Radnor Township School District Finance Committee meeting for Tuesday, March 12th, 2024. First item on the agenda is introductions and administrative remarks. Mr. Pauling, have you got anything?
Yeah, I just want to update the committee. We held our Pennsylvania Association of School Business Officials annual conference last week in Hershey. It's the 69th annual conference. And we had over 1,000 attendees across the state from people from all facets of school business operations, from transportation to finance, food service. And we had a number of staff from our departments here attend from Radnor, and just wanted to give that update that we had a really good week of professional development. This year we developed, as part of PASBO's new members, we have a lot of new payroll members that are a part of the association, so we had a lot of payroll-specific sessions for those new people coming in, which Allison, who's part of our department, attended, and she actually received a scholarship as a first-time attendee to go to the conference at no charge this year. So, so just wanted to provide that update. That's why we had to reschedule our meeting for tonight, but it was very worthwhile to have everybody out there, and it's a lot of good professional development that we bring back to the office.
That's awesome. And do you want to remind everybody what role you play in that organization?
So this year I'm the vice president of PASBO, and then I have a 4-year term, so I'll progress through to president and through my 4-year term, so that'll be in 2 years. But I had a big part in planning the conference this year, so hopefully it seemed to go off without a hitch. We had one minor hiccup with our speaker not being there when we introduced him, but we found him and he came on a few minutes late. But other than that, we had a pretty uneventful week.
And then everything else was perfect, right? So
Nobody said otherwise,
yeah,
so I'll
awesome.
take that. Yeah, but we had a really
So
good time.
we're in Radnor. We're really proud of you representing us that way across the state. So thank you.
Thank you.
For
Yeah,
doing that.
no, it was really good, and like I said, we got, as many people as we could to go from here and, from facilities, and so it was a lot of, we had over 88 educational sessions, and most of that's delivered by other PASBO members. So I did a session on bond ratings. Since we had our AAA upgrade, I was able to present that with Zach from PFM. And so Missy's presented in previous years on certain topics. So it's really a peer-to-peer type conference where we have a lot of our other members that are experts in certain areas. And we had over 200 first-time attendees. So a lot of new people coming into school business that were there for their first conference. So we always have to balance the professional development for new people, but then people that have been doing this for a while to make sure that everybody gets something out of it. But yeah, it went off really well.
Oh, well, congratulations. And this is kind of what my vision for Radnor has always been. Like, we have excellent, teachers, administrators here, and I like the idea that we share what we can do well with maybe districts that are struggling or, can learn from us and not reinvent the wheel. So that's great. That brings us to our second item on the agenda, which is public comment. Seeing none in the room, is there any public comment? Okay. All right, that brings us to item 3, which is the review of the minutes from February. My esteemed colleagues, anybody see anything? Claire's shaking her head like it's okay. Yeah. All right, good. So the minutes stand as written, and that brings us to the action items. Do you want to go in any particular order? Do you want to?
Yeah, I'll just run through them quickly. I mean, we have
Okay.
our financial reports for December. And these are the best kind of agenda items, and these are the ones where we have experts in the audience to answer any questions if they should come up. So there's 2 contracts. There's 3 listed, but really they're lumped in 2. So we had 2 technology contracts that are for computer leases as part of our refresh cycle. And Dr. Hand went out and solicited proposals for the equipment from 3 different leasing companies, and we're recommending moving forward with American Capital. They had the lowest financing rate. We normally finance equipment to spread the cost out evenly across the budget. And we can kind of make it up based on the interest rate. Instead of spending all that money up front, we can invest it almost at the same rate that we're paying in the financing. So overall, and it kind of washes itself out, but we're spreading the cost out over the 4 years. And so I've worked with American Capital before. They're a good financing company to use. So that was, the first two items are kind of lumped together, and so I'll stop there if there's any questions. Dr. Hand's here to answer if there's anything specific about the equipment itself or the lease contracts.
Yeah, can you just explain exactly what you're leasing and how this fits together, why we need financing for this? And
Certainly. So these are our annual leases for our student devices at the high school. So you can see that we have 300 student devices that are coming in for the high school refresh. And this is our refresh year for our elementary teachers. So the teacher devices are due for an update. We originally purchased them way back in COVID, didn't want to say the word, but so it's been 4 years and they're time for that update. So we have them on a 4-year refresh cycle. High school teachers were updated 2 years ago. Middle school teachers were updated this past year. It's time for the elementary teachers for their updated devices.
so you're updating everybody in a cycle of 4 years? Is that what it sounds like?
Correct.
Okay. What are we going to do with, like, the old equipment? I know we have a plan for the high schoolers, but you want to just review that for everybody?
So the old equipment for the high school students, if they've made 4 payments across the 4 years of $139 for a total of $556, that device is then gifted to them. So we write that out of our inventory, and they could use that in their post-secondary studies. For our teaching devices, we tend to repurpose some of those. So some go to building substitutes, our paraprofessionals. We found some really good uses for those. There's always new uses for computers, and we do a sell back as well. So any computing devices and electronics that might just be recycled generally, we partner with recyclers who will also give us money for devices that still hold value. So they will go back annually and price those and grade those based on how many nicks, dents, and scratches and whether or not they're still functional, and we do see some return from those devices as well.
I don't want to put you on the spot because I don't know that I would know this if I were you, but do you know about how many high school students keep theirs versus want to sell them back?
So it's changed every year. Last year was the first time we've actually had a 4-year cycle. So since we started this process in 2019, the kids had iPads and only had the devices 1 year, then they had them 2 years, then 3 years, and then last year was the first time they've only ever made 4 payments. So the year prior, they had only made 3 payments, and they had the option to put in a 4th payment in order to have the device gifted. Now that number was far less. And there are a few students as well who have even said, keep the device, give it to somebody else, we'll redonate it back to the school or use it for another purpose. We've seen some students and some families as well who might say, can I use this for my incoming 9th grader? Sure you can once you've paid for the device, but just do know it's getting on 5, 6, 7, 8 years old by the time they're a senior, but absolutely that's an option as well.
So your family can, like, invest in this, and then what happens though if it stops working? Do they have a way to get back into the cycle somehow?
They could. They could, certainly we have extra devices there and enough for that student population. So they could come back in and say only make 2 years of payments should a device die. Or if they decide they want to move from a BYO program, which we have as well, which is a bring your own device or BYOD program, that some students might elect to have, say, an Apple device. Or some students are still hanging on, have an iPad, and that's what works best for them. So some students do that, and that's about 15% of our population. I think in one grade level it might be a little bit higher, one grade level a little bit lower, but on average it's about 15% of our student population who chooses BYO.
Oh, 15 is BYO.
Correct.
And then in terms of, do you have a percentage for sellback? Well, we don't know, I guess.
Yeah, we don't know. We've been using, at least from the high school and from the middle school devices, we've been repurposing those devices. So this will be the first year, at least for teacher devices, that we'll have a very large number of devices, but we try to refresh those. So things that have gone out for second use, maybe built another cart or using from some of our building-based subs, we'll refresh them and then sell their older devices back. So at least they have some refresh in there as well.
Right. Okay, anybody else? Queries about, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. So since we're on a 4-year cycle, is this about what we should expect year over year?
It will change. It'll be the same for the student devices. That will be a predictable annual cost. So we refresh all devices. These are the only ones that we lease. We also refresh our kindergarteners, third graders, and eighth graders. So it's 3-year, 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 and then a 4-year at the high school level.
Okay.
It's ninth. So these devices, that will be a predictable cost. The other devices for K, 3, and 8 are just, 6 are a natural part of our budget. This lease, that is what you'd expect, because it's about 300 kids, again, depending on population fluctuation. The teacher devices, since they're on a 4-year cycle, but we do it on 3 levels. So next year, we will not see something, but then it'll come up for the high school teachers again, then middle school, then elementary, then there'll be a gap year in there. But I've worked that across a 10-year financial sustainability matrix where I'm maybe budgeting other things in that year and less things during one of these higher years. And the elementary is a little bit higher because it's the aggregate of all 3 elementary buildings. The high school's, the middle school is the smallest one, then the high school's a little bit bigger, but then all 3 elementaries is bigger than either the high school or middle school.
And that budgeting helps because we try to keep that as consistent as possible so we don't have those peaks and valleys. And so as far as these 2 lease schedules go, the payments are the exact same amount for each of the 4 years. So then we factor that in as part of the refresh cycle and all of the other equipment needs that are in Dr. Hand's budget to kind of keep that as level as possible from year to year. Just for my purpose, and I think for his, just the consistency makes it easier for predictability.
So at some point, we're gonna be out of the refresh. Will we have to budget for a large purchase, or you can only refresh them for so long, right?
So the leasing is for 4 years. So once the lease up, it's a dollar buyout on the lease, so we own those devices. So we can, again, repurpose those, we can sell those back, and then it would be time for a new refresh on there. So basically, the costs are predictable across all 4 of those years, across those cycles.
So then we'd reevaluate these after the 4 years, and then by then, the speed of the way technology changes, we'll have new device recommendations at that time. So we'll try to keep it as consistent from a cost basis, but for every 4 years, it'll be pretty much locked in, and then we'll reevaluate that at the end of the 4 years.
I suspect there might be a little bit of disconnect between the terms we're using. When you say refresh, you mean we're getting all new devices?
Correct.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Thank you.
So,
That was a disconnect.
yeah, I thought
Yep.
it sounded like that a little bit. Okay, so,
Yeah.
yeah. Claire, anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Do you want to
Go to the next one? Yep.
move on? Yeah,
So the other contract that we have is for PTS therapy services, so we're presenting a 3-year renewal. And they are for therapeutic services that are needed for students that have occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech services, behavioral services for when we need to look outside of the district for those services. And so the rates that are provided are in the proposal for the 3 years. There are slight increases from the first to the second year in some of the categories, from $1 to $2 per hour, but then remain flat for the 3rd year. So we're looking at pretty much flat pricing, other than some minor fluctuations from year 1 to year 2, for those different therapy services, and they're as needed. So when we require a service, we reach out to PTS. They would be able to provide staffing at that hourly rate, but we're not locked into specific service or specific staff member. It's just if Ms. Lesage and her department needs anybody from PTS to provide those services, we have those rates locked in and we can contract with them through that. And so I'll open it up. I'm sure there are
yeah.
logistical questions about
Yeah,
when we need the services and how frequently and whatnot.
I'm so glad you're here. So I'm, no, because I'm interested in this. So how often do we have to reach outside of district for this?
Okay, so for the speech and language, the occupational therapist, and the physical therapist, all of our therapists come from PTS, and they have for years. Yes.
We don't have
We
any.
did have some speech and language therapists, and we did, 2 of them retired, and we put out for hire, and we were unable to locate the staff that had the certifications that we require here at Radnor. And we put it out, and I probably should, it's at least 2 years, but I think we actually did it 3 years. And we've been utilizing, PTS has been here always with speech and language. That was the only one we ever had as a district employee. But we always had other speech and language therapists since I started in 2014, and I believe it was years before that through PTS as well. So yes, all OTs have always been through PTS, and physical therapists the same through PTS.
And you said, though, you do have speech therapists from other agencies as well as?
No, we do
PTS?
not.
Oh,
No,
so-
we
okay.
used to have 2 employees.
Oh,
When they retired, that's correct. We tried to reach out, and Ms. Solomon, I know you know, like, it's very difficult to get staffing right now. And that's one of the reasons why you see the behavior support. So our registered behavior technicians, our RBTs are in here, as well as our BTs, our behavior technicians. And we do have the ability to hire them as Radnor Township School District employees. But again, it's the same situation where it's very difficult to find the people and that have the qualities and the references that we require here at Radnor. PTS has a pretty good track record for us.
So you're able to find what you need when you need it, is what, kind of this fits what we need
So
as a
I will
district.
say, just knowing, I just went to a conference myself and spoke with all the directors that I know. Right now, Radnor is fully staffed in the regards of speech and language, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. There are some paraeducators that we are still trying to locate, but from the people that I speak to in Delaware County, I may be one of the very few school districts that is fully staffed in therapists right now.
So the way it might work is someone would come to us at the start of the year from this company, and then if it's working well, they'll stay on for the year.
That is correct.
You've got them at your,
And I will say, through PTS, there are at least 3 therapists that we have had here at Radnor. And honestly, if you went to anyone in the building, they believe they're Radnor employees. They've been here so long. And they are very, very good. And PTS also provides us with the supervision that is required, the training for all of these staff members, because it's very specialized to make sure that they maintain their certifications. So that is another big benefit with working with a company like PTS.
and how about the BCBA's? Do we have any in-house, or are we using,
We do
All
not
from-
use PTS. So we use Phoenix, and I believe we have that contract that comes up every year. Phoenix is the one we use. I guess she's the CEO, but the person who's in charge of that entire company has been with Radnor now for at least 7 years, and her name's Jackie Santalupo. She's amazing, and she also provides some support for even the PTS staff members that are the registered behavior technicians, because she is the one that helps our staff write positive behavior support plans, and then she'll go in and work directly with them. So she's kind of like the crossover person, but she is our BCBA and has been for years.
so behavior technicians are also what we might call a one-on-one or a PCA? Is that the
Slightly
same?
different,
Okay.
slightly different. They have a little more of the behavior training, but they haven't passed the testing and the hours that it takes to be a registered behavior technician. So they're working on it and are probably going to get there, but a lot of times we'll bring them in and we assist with those hours, and then they will become RBTs. But until they are registered, we don't get charged as much because we're helping them.
And they are all from this same Phoenix, so they're all working
They're all
together.
from PTS.
Oh.
PTS is here, Phoenix is our BCBA with
Okay.
Jackie
Got
Santalupo.
it.
2 totally different things,
Oh,
correct?
okay. Just the BCBA's. Got it.
Okay?
Anybody else?
And I'll just jump in real quickly, just from the previous 3-year agreement that we had with PTS, the hourly rates have increased by about $1 to $1.50 per hour from the last agreement to this one. But they held those prices firm for the full 3 years. So we were paying For example, a behavior technician, $33.99 since the 21-22 school year, which that rate went up to $34.99. So it went up $1 per hour, but that $33.99 was in place since the 21-22 school year. So I think based on staffing needs and costs, I think it's very reasonable in the proposal of what we're looking at, what we were at the prior 3 years and what we're looking at for the next 3 years in the agreement.
So this is a three-year contract.
Yep, and the rates are broken out. We have them up on the screen for each year. Yep.
Do you anticipate any hourly change for needs and services? So if this is by the hour, how it's going?
It's individualized.
Right.
No, not really. I really think we're kind of, like, if you would have asked me this in 2019, I would have said, no, we're pretty solid. And then COVID hit, so I don't like to, like, project too much out, but I really feel like what we're doing right now is supporting the students we have. And I feel like through all of the programming that we have in place, I'm really feeling that we're starting to level out just a little bit, yeah. Knocking on wood.
Anything else?
Oh, and first, yeah,
Sorry.
no, you're fine. And for students that utilize this program, what like security do you guys use? Is your software up to date for students' files and information that might be held?
Absolutely. So all of our information is in the Power School system, which is the same system that is all of what we do. It's actually through Dr. Hand. But Power School holds everyone's, all the students' IEPs that they may have. It holds all of their 504 agreements, their GIEPs, and evaluations that are done, and it is extremely secure.
And for students that may graduate and they're out of school and they're done with this program, how are those files like held or handled at least?
Sure. So they stay in the system, which is an electronic system, and we have to keep some documents, which is the first document they ever had and the last, for multiple years. But basically, we keep all of the kids' documents for till they're 26. And that's when we notify, it's on our website, that at that point we can get rid of all the documents except for the very first evaluation that a student would have had, the very last evaluation, their very last document, IEP 504, and the very last, what we call a NOREP, which is a Notice of Recommended Educational Placement. So we have to keep those documents pretty much forever.
Okay.
Because sometimes they reach back to us and they request these as students get older. Sometimes they'll request them. They might be a junior in college and might want to take a look at their document and might want their university to look at it as well, even that many years out.
And I'm not fully understanding why, but I don't understand like the duration of time that it's held. I would have assumed it was after high school.
Yeah.
Students' files would be in some way removed in like a safe manner. So I don't really understand why it's till age 26.
Well, I'm going to jump in there. We're specifically talking about students that are receiving special education. This isn't for the whole student population necessarily. So a lot of what we do, and then of course the expert can answer, but has to do with legal requirements on when somebody might,
It's the law.
want to inquire
Yeah.
about what,
Yeah.
Plans were in place. You can jump in,
Yeah,
experts.
it's the law. That's
Okay.
the answer. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I assumed, but I thought I'd ask. All right. Thank you.
Those are.
They are excellent questions, because I was just hearing about the breach in the Minneapolis school district I assume that's what you're following up on, so good thoughts. Thank you, Jenny.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so those are the action items that we presented. We'll move those on to the agenda for next week's full meeting for approval.
Yep.
So the second item on the agenda is Dr. Weidlich asked me to allocate some time for him to discuss the middle school cheerleading program and discussing it as potentially becoming a PIAA sport. So Dr. Weidlich's joining us remotely. I see him on the screen, and I will turn it over to him.
Well, thank you, Mr. Pauling, and thank you to the board for your flexibility. You know, with spring sports and kids, oftentimes things get rescheduled at the very last minute, so thank you. So here at the middle school, we are looking to propose adding cheerleading as a co-ed PIAA sport effective fall of 2024. So RMS Cheer has been an established club over the past 2 years, and based on our participation numbers, it is evident that there's a lot of interest within this sport. So this co-ed cheer experience has given 25 students back in 22-23 and 23-24 a real opportunity to be part of a team and to enhance, you know, their own physical, social, and emotional well-being, and really truly support and drive our school spirit, and you know, really enhance the sense of belonging here at the middle school. So cheerleading, there's a lot of different reasons why we're looking to bring this from a club to a sport. So for example, first and foremost, it's going to feed into our high school's already well-established cheer program. It's a challenging and rewarding activity that involves physical, mental, and artistic skills, requires cheerleaders to perform stunts, tumbling, dance routines that need power, endurance, agility, as well as coordination. Promote school spirit, leadership, positive self-esteem among students. All of that is extremely pivotal, especially at the middle level. You know, we believe that that cheerleading deserves to be a supported and funded PIAA sport at the middle school, and this will provide our student athletes 2 seasons per year to participate. And ultimately, our goal is to have maximum participation, you know, in our athletic opportunities, as well as our clubs and extracurriculars, and this will just give another official, you know, opportunity. We took a look at cost. I mean, because cost of sports can get expensive, and what we did is we compared it to other PIAA sports here at Radnor Middle School, and aside from the initial startup, it is relatively a low-cost sport. Our initial startup fee would cover uniforms, tumbling mats, and such. And as of right now, in looking at the initial startup cost, it would be anywhere between $4,000 to $7,000, depending on the number of mats. And similar to all of our other sports, they would follow a rotation, like a new uniform rotation every couple of years, as well as maintenance of the mats. So, you know, again, we're just looking to maximize opportunities for our kids. And, you know, given the interest as a club, we're just looking to have it as a funded PIAA sport starting next year.
All right, thank you. Questions? Guys, anything? I do have one question. How many students participate in the club format right now?
So as of right now, so when we look back at numbers in 22-23, we had 26 students. This year we have 24 students. So there is, you know, when we hired a new teacher a couple of years ago, one of her charges, of course, in being an outstanding educator, was to help start a school program of cheer. And I'm all about like maximizing opportunities, and to see the number of students sustain after 2 years as a club was really refreshing to all of us at the middle school.
All right, so this is just my personal opinion, so please don't anyone think this represents anything more than just my observation. I have watched the cheerleaders do their stunts, and some of it terrifies me. There's somebody high in the air, and they flip them, and they sometimes are caught, and I've seen them not be caught properly. So what are your thoughts about the safety of this?
So, you know, I mean, safety is our utmost priority, and having trained coaches, you know, help the students perform stunts within middle level. I call it like a middle level range. Like we're, you know, middle level students or middle level cheers typically do not do the strenuous activities that a high school. And what I'm meaning is like flips in the air and stuff like that. But they do lifts, and they will do some. I'm going to embarrass myself by even trying to put a name to this, but you know, jumps within the air, you know, and so on. But our coaches, you know, they do have experience. The coaches that we have right now that would be encouraged to apply if this did become a PIAA sport do have extensive amount of experience, both personal as well as coaching. So we would want to make sure that our coaches are trained and their training is sustained and it's recurring, but also our students are trained as well. So it's just it goes back to the basics. It goes back to skill development and such.
And can I just ask you, you may not know this off the top of your head, but is it predominantly female students, or is it open to male, female students, or what?
It is open to any student. Back in 22-23, I believe we had one male student participate, and he was a rock star. This year we do not, but it is open to anyone who would be interested in participating.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any queries, anything that you've noticed? You probably see more of this activity at school. No, you don't.
Like you were saying, the
Safety
cheerleaders.
aspect?
The cheerleaders, I do, in my opinion, I see it as a sport already.
Oh, yeah, but, yeah.
And I do see there's a lot of people constantly trying to be involved with cheerleading. I noticed the upcoming, the freshman class right now, they all have a high desire of cheerleading. There's a lot of freshmen doing it right now.
Oh, thanks for that. All right. What do we do at this point now?
So if there's support from the committee, then we can evaluate this as part of the budget process, and I think the costs are minimal enough that Dr. Weidlich and myself can work on, incorporating that in the budget if there's support for that. And then we can circle back with the committee, but we would, be able to introduce that as part of the
Okay.
budget.
So is there support on committee, first of all?
And it's really more, not necessarily looking for the committee to approve it, just
Right.
any questions or
Do we
feedback.
want to push it forward?
Administratively, maybe this will help you, we're planning to move forward, unless there was some strong concerns from this group for things that we hadn't thought about. But I think that's interesting that you see a lot with the freshmen, since it's been a club since last year, that's already generating some continued maybe increase in student involvement. So we would just include this as part of the budget process as our plan moving forward. And as we discuss the overall budget, this is a piece that will be included.
All right.
Just, what other sports are currently PIAA sports, and do you anticipate other clubs wanting to follow as well? Sorry, second.
So I can answer. So at the middle school, we do not have the amount of sports that the high school has, but we do have a number of sports, both for boys and girls, in the fall, winter, and the spring seasons. So in the winter, we have field hockey, we have football, we have soccer, cross country, volleyball. In the winter, we have boys, girls basketball, as well as wrestling. And in the fall, we also have girls tennis. Sorry about that. And then this spring, we have boys tennis, we have boys and girls lacrosse, softball, baseball, as well as track and field. So this will just be another offering, for our kids.
And as part of our budget process, and this has actually come up before at these finance meetings, we have had requests from some of the club sports at the high school. And sometimes a club sport, and it can be a challenge to decipher, we have clubs and we have activities, but then we also have club sports. And club sports at the high school are because, there isn't a PIAA version often of that sport, but so it's a club sport. But we've had several requests for additional funding, and we are continuing administratively to look at that, and we plan to present that as part of the budget cycle as well with the board to say, here's what we recommend, what we think we can do or can't do, or, those pieces. As part of that discussion, we've talked about trying to look in this budget cycle, our current club sports and that funding. And then also, we as administratively and as a board, we believe we need to look at the funding of all of our supplementals, but that's something that we wouldn't have completed for this budget cycle. That's something we'd like to be looking at through the summer and into the fall of next year, all of those supplemental.
And Dr. Weidlich, correct me if I'm wrong, but we piloted the cheerleading program at the middle school as a club to gauge interest and participation, and now that we've seen that program grow, because cheerleading is a PIAA sport at the high school level and at the middle school level, we're making the recommendation tonight to elevate that to the PIAA because we saw the interest at the club level that we can now elevate that.
Correct. Yeah. When the idea of a cheer team came to light back in the fall of 22, I wanted to make sure that there were numbers to support it. So we typically do 2 to 3 years, and the signups for next year are already pretty high. So.
One more question for you. The fact that it's a club and open to all may invite folks to participate who may not want to participate at a PIAA level. With consideration for the folks who may end up in that situation.
I'll let Dr. Wildlick respond. I don't know if there's any difference. I wouldn't actually see any difference.
Especially at the middle school level.
Yeah, especially at the middle school level. I don't think whether it's a club or PIAA would impact interest of kids. If anything, I think being now a PIAA might make it even more enticing for kids to be part of it because there's a little bit more to it now that it's recognized as a PIAA sport. But Dr. Wildlick, I don't know if I'm right or wrong on that.
No, you hit the nail on the head. And the other thing is as a club, I'm a little more hesitant to go into competition and things of that nature. So this would just really give us more opportunity to, in addition to cheering for all of our sports teams, but make it competitive in nature because there are several other middle schools when we did research who are competitive both in the Central League as well as outside leagues, including but not limited to the Chessmont is another very large middle school cheer programs. Like they have a lot of programs within there. So this just gives us another added competitive layer where our kids can participate and compete.
I just want to caution that the competition is not necessarily for everyone, and as the program's described to me right now, it's for everyone. So a more competitive environment, you may lose that opportunity for folks. I just want to be conscious that everyone may not want more competition, but still enjoy cheer.
Okay, so we will work on incorporating this as part of the budget, and then we'll circle back. If there's any other questions, we can present them to Dr. Weidlich or myself, and we'd be happy to answer them then.
So I'm just going to editorialize a little bit, and it has nothing to do with cheer at middle school. But through the years, there's been a lot of discussion back and forth about all these extracurriculars and all the supplementals and all the money that goes towards what's extra to the curriculum. And there seems to be more and more demand for funds for that. And I just want to be pretty cautious about it because we call it extracurricular for a reason. Like, we do want to support the whole child and have lots of options for them, but just with all the stresses on our finances right now as a district, and I understand you're going to put it in the context of the whole budget, but it just seems like there is a lot of pressure right now for this extra, so just, I keep highlighting extra.
I will just say, agree, it all adds up. And as we do the budget, every dollar counts as we do the budget. And we often get down to, really splitting hairs with the budget as we look so carefully at it. And we're at that time of year where we're doing that. So no, the point's well taken. And we also try to balance that with, the educational value of, our clubs and activities and as part of our educational program as well.
Does that bring us down to delinquent real estate taxes?
We'll get to that one in a second.
Okay.
So, I have on the agenda a budget update.
Oh, yes.
Overall, the update is, I'm punting that till next week. We're going to have a presentation for the full board at next week's action meeting. So I have a preview. If you remember, at our committee meeting last month, we presented the budget at recommending a 5.3% tax increase to go up to the Act 1 index limit for this year. in being at that number was a lot due to the incorporation of the debt for Ithan Elementary School, and we had talked about what we were looking as phasing that in. I have made some adjustments to the budget, and I'm sorry, I was remiss to say that at that 5.3%, we were at a deficit budget of $849,000. And I don't have slides here because I don't want to, I'll have previews for next week, yes. No, I didn't post them, so you didn't miss anything. I'll have them for next week, but we made some adjustments to the budget, and real quickly, our investment earnings for this year, we've already hit budget for the year through December at $1.3 million. So we will definitely be, when we have this discussion as part of the audit and projecting where we'll be at the end of this year, we will be well above budget on that, just because of the rates and what we've done to kind of maximize our return on that. So I've budgeted $1.3 million in the 24-25 budget. We're at already for the year. So I feel comfortable increasing that up to by $700,000 up to $2 million. I just got some more information yesterday. Inflation's not slowing down as much, so they're potentially looking at fewer rate cuts for next year. They were originally talking about 6 rate cuts. Now it may be down to 2 or 3, and in slow increments of 25 basis points, so 0.25%. So with us being above 5% now, even if there's a few rate cuts next fiscal year, it shouldn't impact that number significantly, that we can make that adjustment to the budget. So there's $700,000 of adjustment right there. The governor had a $200 million total basic education subsidy increase as part of his budget recommendation. Discussion is fairly confident that that will cross the finish line. There doesn't seem to be too much angst over that in Harrisburg. So we will be getting some money from the state, whether it's that. So I am increasing that amount by about $125,000, which is our share of that $2 million. So we're not balancing the budget by any means, but it'll help. And then there's also some grant funding in the budget through the PCCD agency that we already have, but we're continuing that funding, and we've been using it for a mental health counselor. So the counselor's already in the budget, but we've secured the funding for 2 years. So I have the $75,000 for that funding that I can make that adjustment. So $200,000 between that and the basic ed adjustment. So with both of those increases, it does cover the deficit we had budgeted, and now we would be at a 5.25% tax increase with a balanced budget. So we still have more work to do. I'll have different scenarios I'll be presenting next week regarding the debt at Ithan. And again, since we've all but committed to the project, we will have to pay it at some point, but it's philosophically whether we build that into the millage now or what that would look like if we phase that in over the next couple of years. So more to come next week. That's the update for tonight's meeting. And then we'll get to the final item, which is the delinquent real estate tax collection. So in the fall of 2022, we presented information from a group that I had worked with before that other school districts in the area, including TE, have worked with, called Portnoy Law Associates. They are a firm that works on delinquent real estate tax collection. So our former process for this was we would submit to the county through the real estate tax sale law is the mechanism that's in place for delinquent tax collections. At the end of February, so right about this time, we submit all of our real estate taxes that hadn't been paid during the fiscal year to the county. They would start accruing interest from day one on the taxpayer. Eventually, they would send out notification to the taxpayer that there was in delinquency, it's accruing interest. You need to pay your tax, and then every month it's accruing 0.75% interest because there's a 9% statutory interest rate in that tax law that goes directly back to the taxpayer. And then once the payment is received, the county would collect a 5% fee for administrative costs for collecting that tax for us. When we made the recommendation and the approval to move with Portnoy, the county was not charging the 5% fee to any Portnoy clients at the time. And so, at the time, when we did the presentation, we had 16 municipalities, no other school districts, but 16 municipalities in Delaware County that were using Portnoy Law Associates. None of us were incurring the 5% fee. So really what we were doing is we would submit the base amount and the penalty amount of 10% to Portnoy. They would work with our residents and taxpayers to set up payment plans if necessary. There was a small $25 fee for the initial letter, which we would recoup. But for the most part, we were avoiding interest and fees unless we weren't getting a response back from the person who owed the taxes. And then the fees would escalate as Portnoy would have to escalate the collection back to that. But for people that, you know, they just had a rough year, we would work out collection plans with them. So on January 1st, we received a letter from the county that they were now going to be asking us for that 5% fee. There's been case law which has proven successful to other counties that have used a firm like Portnoy or Portnoy themselves, where we would need to pay that 5% fee, even though they are not collecting the taxes for us. So I put together a analysis of what that would cost. It's not available for you. Okay. Okay. So give me 1 second, and I will post that.
Wait, is it this or something else?
No, it's the one-page chart, and I will get that up on the screen in a second here. So if you refresh, it should be in the public documents now. So I tried to show what the cost would be to the taxpayer under the old, that's it, yep.
This one,
Yep.
okay.
So I have it up on the screen now. So,
Got it.
just to show, so this, just to make the math easy, it's a tax bill of $10,000. So that equates to a property that would be assessed at $683,392. Again, just for illustration purposes, I made the math easy to show. So if, under the old system, if Delaware County was collecting that for us, we would submit the $10,000 base amount of the tax bill plus the 10% penalty. They would start accruing interest at 0.75% on day one. And so you could see that after 6 months, that would accrue $504 of interest. The 5% commission came out of our share, so the taxpayer did not pay that 5%. It came out of the share back to the district. So after 6 months, the total due was $11,504 to the taxpayer, so that's the base amount, the penalty, plus the interest. The county would take the 5% commission from that amount, and we would receive a little under $11,000. So for a 12-month scenario, as it's accruing more interest, the 5% commission comes off of the $12,032, which is the $10,000, the extra $1,000 for the penalty, and then the $1,032 in interest. We would receive of that after the 5% commission, $11,430. So what we were looking at this year, when the 5% wasn't owed, was under Portnoy, the taxpayer would have a $10,000 bill with the $1,000 penalty. There's no interest accruing from day one. The only time that Portnoy starts charging interest is if they submit a lien to the prothonotari's office. It varies by property based on responsiveness, but we estimated it could be anywhere from 7 to 9 months where that would possibly trigger and the interest would accrue. Just for consistent illustration, I used a 6-month cutoff just to show what that would look like. So if they paid within that first 6 months, there was no interest due, there was no 5% due. We submitted 11,000, we got 11,000 collected for the district. And then if it went longer and it was liened, if it started collecting interest from month 7 to month 12 at $514, that would be what the taxpayer would pay. So $11,514 versus the $12,032 they would have paid under 12 months with the county above. But we'd collect slightly more just based on the math, within $100 of each other. So moving forward now with the 5% fee, it's the same $10,000 bill, 10% penalty. With Portnoy, we're still not accruing interest from day one, But the question would be, to make up for that versus going back with the Tax Claim Bureau is the 5% fee. If we would assess that to the taxpayer, you can see their total would be $11,550. That $550 would go right to the county. It doesn't come to the district. We would still collect our $11,000 that was due. And then you can see what that would look like at 12 months. And so comparatively, based on the old system with the county, if we did not recoup that 5% from the taxpayer, we would be losing out on that. So I think looking at submitting it to the Delaware County versus Portnoy, the numbers work out to be almost identical if we institute that 5% fee. We can do that under the existing agreement. We've talked to Mike Christofko, our solicitor, about being able to do that. It wouldn't require an additional resolution. But the advantage with Portnoy is it's not triggering the interest until we get to a point where we're not having, communication with the taxpayer. We can still work out payment plans. There are different options that we have with Portnoy as well as the taxpayer does. The reporting is better. They start to collect sooner than what we do with the county. So if I'm making a recommendation tonight is that we continue with Portnoy through the end of the agreement, reevaluate it. But I think, based on when we would institute the 5% or the interest versus having that 5% fee recouped, it doesn't impact the taxpayer significantly from a dollars and cents standpoint, but it gives them more flexibility working with Portnoy than what it does with the county. So we're presenting that as our option this evening for discussion, and then, if we need to move anything forward, we can, but under the current agreement, we don't necessarily need to have a board action to move forward in that direction.
So I've heard this explained twice, and I still don't understand why with Portnoy, they're not accruing interest for 6 months. Who's floating that? They are?
Yeah, so Portnoy collects their money more on the back end. So the fees are higher for people that decide to not reach out, to not start working out. So as we get into court costs and other legal fees, the time that they put out on the back end is where they recoup their costs. They're not making money off of, an elderly resident that had a rough year and they're having difficulty paying their taxes. We try to work with them and set up payment plans so that as the district, we just want to be whole on the tax bill. We don't want to try to make any extra money out of that.
So how are they making money off of this? You're saying at the real delinquent?
Yeah, the more delinquent, the higher ones, the ones where, we're not, again, if we file a lien against the property and there's court costs and other costs like that, it's recouped more on that side of things. The only fee to the taxpayer is, and I believe the county normally charges a $65 fee for the initial notification. Portnoy is either 24 or 25. So it's even a lesser charge for that notification. So that pays for that initial reach out and communication to them. But for the most part, a lot of our taxpayers and most, they don't see those fees. It's for people that are significantly delinquent. And because we've only been working with Portnoy for a year, where we'll see this more as people that we filed for 2022 that still haven't paid their taxes yet. They're not working with Portnoy to recoup those funds, and then through the legal process, they'll start to institute those higher fees to those people.
So is it also an advantage that we're getting more of these settled by using them? Or
Absolutely,
Oh,
yes.
oh.
Yeah, so we
I
are
was
getting
like,
our
well,
money
otherwise what?
sooner
Okay.
because they're more proactive on the front end and working with people to set up those payment plan options. So yes, we're definitely seeing the advantage of that. The reporting that we get from the office is better. We get a weekly remittance report with all of the details of what they collected. I pick up the phone, I can have Kevin Burax from Portnoy on the phone right away if something comes up. So I think there's an advantage for us, there's an advantage for the taxpayer. Unfortunately, the county has implemented this, which other counties did, and I think we kind of knew this eventually was coming. We got by for a year, but unfortunately, we have to moving forward. And again, I think just to make the district whole and to equalize it to what the previous process was, passing that 5% fee on to the taxpayer to recoup that.
Anybody have any comments?
First of all, this grid is excellent, really,
Oh,
really.
thank you.
Explained, I did look at it earlier, and it's so much better now that you have gone over it, Mr. Pond. And I do like the idea that it is friendlier to the taxpayer and friendlier to us as your staff to work through those things. And I remember, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, that it's a small percentage of delinquent taxes that we're talking about, correct?
Yeah.
So annually, this past year, it's like less than 5%?
Oh, much less, yeah. I mean, we usually have in our budget a 97% collection rate. It varies from year to year, but we're usually a little north of that.
Okay.
We build in some buffer just in case, because it can fluctuate from year to year. But on average, it's, a little over 97%.
Good to know. So
Yeah.
this is not a big problem for us as a district, and it is helpful to moving forward. So,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
And so we have other things in place for our residents that, really need assistance, like our matching rent rebate program. So we have that in place for elderly residents that may have a hard time. We've been trying to get the word out, through the senior center. I know they had an event today that unfortunately I couldn't make. But I've been working with their contact, Margot, to get information out to our residents on, our program that we have to match whatever rebate they would get through the Department of Revenue.
Can we direct residents directly to Portnoy?
They do. So if we submit it as delinquent, they work directly with Portnoy. So Portnoy has a customer service center.
Okay.
That our residents, they reach out directly to them. They have a call center. They can be reached by email. So they have their own dedicated customer service department to work with residents that need to make a delinquent payment.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right.
Okay.
I think that brings us to any new business. Is there any new business committee? No. Is there any public comment generated by our meeting? Seeing none, our next meeting, oh boy, will be April, hold on, I have it.
April 2nd. It's
Okay.
April 2nd.
We're April 2nd.
Yeah,
at
our
5
meetings are a little
o'clock.
accelerated in April because of the primary.
Okay, I got it here. Yep, April 2nd at 5 PM.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.